Hello and welcome to our gardens. So you join me on such a beautiful day and such a beautiful time of year here in southern Vermont. Right now I am dividing some of our perennials, and this is a great time of year to do it. But really, if the weather stays mild and you keep things nice and well watered, you can do this any time of year, I've found. We are creating a new part of our garden, kind of extending these cottage borders, and we're going to be calling it the dining garden. And what I'm going to be doing now is just some of these plants that I'm dividing, I'm just taking half of the plant or clump of plants, depending, and just filling that area up. This is a great way to keep healthy plants and to make sure that everything that we're planting in that new border is something that we know does really, really well here, like this Nepeta or catmint. But I am so excited for what we have in store for you today. In today's episode, we talked to Jennifer Casey, one of the visionary owners of the ever-inspiring Equinox Valley Nursery.
We love to change things around constantly. We always want to have something new, something exciting, something unique.
Then we visit Valerie and Peter Radford, where their breathtaking garden unfolds like a living masterpiece.
Well, I'm a garden hobbyist. Some people would say I'm obsessed with gardening. I do have a full-time job, but every time I get out in the garden.
And I'll be dividing and planting this Nepeta. Okay, so I'm just dividing this Nepeta. Now the way that I like to do this is I will dig a little circle around the plant, maybe 5 inches or so away from the base of the plant, just to give room for that root ball. And if I notice in that first kind of push in of the shovel that there are some roots, I'm noticing roots, then I'll give it a little bit more space and I'll just sort of extend the circumference of the circle. Now, right now I am able to use a shovel because we've already dug this hole initially to put the plant in several years ago. If we hadn't done that and I was just trying to dig this same sized hole into our soil, we would have to use a pickaxe because, as you know, our soil is essentially just rocks here. So once I've dug the circumference of the plant, then what I like to do is just go straight in the center and just chop it in half. Now it depends on, how old your plant is, the health of the plant and all of that in terms of how much you want to divide it. But typically with these, you want to be dividing them once every 3 years or so. And I like to just divide them in half. If it's a huge plant and I really notice that I'm able to get more bang for my buck and divide it again in quarters, then I'll do that. And that's just sort of more plant for more places in your garden. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and transplant our division here. But one of the most important aspects of this kind of plant division is that you have really healthy plants to begin with. And most of the perennials in this garden have come from a place that is very, very special to me, Equinox Valley Nursery.
The Equinox Valley Nursery was established in 1979 by my parents, Roger and Penny Pruce, who moved to Vermont for a better way of life. They bought the piece of property with the only thing on it being the old antique barn. Over the last 45 years, they've built it up to what people can visit today. 13 greenhouses, 72 acres that are farmed, and basically 4 seasons of fabulous stuff for people to see. My name is Jennifer Casey, and I'm co-owner, greenhouse manager, and all-around do-it-everything person here. As a kid, I absolutely grew up gardening, moved here at the age of 9 when the business was just starting. And of course, it was all hands on deck to build the business. So gardening was kind of instilled in me at a very young age with a hard work ethic. And I love it. You know, I absolutely cannot imagine myself not gardening, to the point that it's just an everyday thing for me. Fall is a great time to visit the nursery. We love fall because it has so much additional gardening aspects to it, from the pumpkins to the gourds to the Indian corn to the overall experience of going through our pumpkin patch that we grow our own pumpkins in, to our corn maze, that sort of fun stuff as well. Our corn maze is geared towards families because not everybody wants to be stuck in corn for hours. Because we're known for our scarecrow display, we actually will put scarecrows through the corn maze to get everybody to visit every corner of it. Our apple cider donuts are, we've been told, the best that are around, and they're world known. My father, Roger, actually created our special recipe because when we decided to make apple cider donuts, he didn't want to make the average apple cider donut. He wanted to make sure that people actually said, wow, this is the best I've ever eaten. And we love making apple cider donuts. And our wagon rides are tractor driven during the week. We're actually very lucky to be able to offer horse-drawn wagon rides for the next 3 weeks during fall foliage due to the grace of the Washington County Draft Animal Association. I wish I had elaborate gardens. I love to garden, but the business allows me 24/7 gardening. So when I get home, I have more collections. I tend to pick up a new plant that's come in and add it to my collection versus having really elaborate gardens. I love hosta, so I've got a big hosta collection. I love daylilies. I've got a big daylily collection. I love peonies. I collect peonies when the new ones come out. So it's sort of gardening. Oh, challenges in gardening are consistent. Weather, of course, dealing with the latest, newest insect that might be coming down the road. We work with the state of Vermont quite often on monitoring anything that's coming into the state. They actually will set up monitoring stations. Keeping up with what's trending as well. People, of course, read gardening magazines, they are searching on the internet, they're watching gardening shows, they're coming to us for what they're seeing and hearing about. So making sure that we have what they're looking for, I find a challenge. There's no crystal ball. But yeah, definitely the weather lately has been the biggest challenge. When we have a year like we just had, it was easy. The weather was fantastic for gardening. When we get a lot of rain, on the other hand, that can be a lot more challenging. We probably carry over 500 different varieties of perennials throughout the season. Same with our nursery stock and evergreens, from dwarf conifers that are hardy for the area on up to screening evergreens. Annuals, we specialize in the new, the unusual, the hard to find, as well as your basic bread and butters. We've really gotten into trying to carry more natives and pollinators, because that seems to be very popular and it seems very beneficial. Bulbs, we carry a wide range of Dutch bulbs, including the new Proven Winter line of bulbs that everybody's been asking for, so we have those as well. But yes, if somebody's looking for something specific, we try very hard to find it as well. Because if it's hardy for the area, if we haven't heard of it or don't have it, we want to make sure that somebody has that. We are Four Seasons, and we do offer houseplant. We actually call it our tropical conservatory because we do carry a lot of tropical plants in there that aren't hardy for the area. But we do know that Folks like to have the houseplants during the winter, so we do a wide selection of houseplants, and the inventory in there changes periodically based on the season as well. We do have our pet birds. Milo and Maui are in there. They can be a lot of fun for folks to visit, as well as our turtle pond, which is kind of fun. Families like to bring the kids in to visit the birds and the turtles while they're shopping for the houseplants. We are very fortunate to have been able to have a lilac named after our nursery called the Equinox Valley Lilac, which my father discovered while renovating a local country club. He recognized it as a variety he did not know. So he painstakingly saved the plant that was there, tried to source the variety name, and couldn't. Even submitted it to the National Lilac Society, to other nurseries and growers. Nobody could figure out what the name of the lilac was. So we were able to reintroduce it through tissue culture and now have it available as the Equinox Valley Lilac. The goals for the nursery really never end. We always want to keep building and making it better for our customers and our visitors. We love to change things around constantly. We always want to have something new, something exciting, something unique. Just making it a great experience each time somebody comes is our goal. People can find out more about us as we do have a website, equinoxvalleynursery.com, that was just newly redesigned. We're also on Facebook and Instagram, and word of mouth. People love, there was just a video posted the other day of somebody that visited during fall foliage, and I love to see stuff like that. So we get a lot of word of mouth from folks saying, we heard, so we're here. So it's great that's how people can find out about us. My favorite part of the nursery and being here is that I get to do what I love with family every day and great customers. We really do love what we do, and people say it shows in when they visit the property and can speak to us. So that's what I'm most proud of.
So I'm just starting to backfill this with a little bit of soil and some of our leaf mold from last year. Oh my gosh, isn't that the most inspiring nursery? If you're in this area and you haven't been to Equinox Valley Nursery, I highly recommend it. It is just rife with inspiration and ideas. So speaking of ideas, to dig this hole to transplant this Nepeta required so much work. We have a stacked stone wall here, and all of the stones, which are pretty hefty in size and weights, are all just from digging plants in this garden. So the next garden we're going to be visiting today is one that is so inspiring to sort of solve the problems that your garden inherently will present to you, specifically rocks in the soil.
We've had a great time sharing this place.
Mm-hmm.
This is exactly, if I had written a script, I would not have thought I would be here, but I am glad I'm here. I'm really glad I'm here. This is a phenomenal place to live.
Yeah.
And we have so much fun here, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah,
It's the most fun we've ever done as a couple, and we're
Yeah.
very fortunate to have gardening.
Yeah. There you go.
My name is Valerie Radford.
And I'm Peter Radford.
We definitely started gardening right away. I don't think we knew what we were getting into at the time. We started quite small and rejuvenating certain beds that existed, and it just kept on growing, and we kept on pushing back the boundaries and digging up brambles and being intrepid.
One of the people that has done work here used to tease me that Mrs. Radford would like to garden all the way up to the top of the mountain. And I used to say, yeah, that's probably true.
Well, I'm a garden hobbyist. Some people would say I'm obsessed with gardening. I do have a full-time job, but every time I get out in the garden.
Yeah, and I grew up gardening in England with my parents. We had we did the whole thing, vegetables, chickens, the whole works. It's in my blood, let me put it that way. How long have we been in this house? Since 2012.
This is our woodland. This actually was the first garden that we created. This garden, when we got here, was overrun with brambles and a climber, and my husband literally spent 3 days and completely stripped this thing bare. The interesting thing about this garden is everywhere we dug, we had garbage. We found old horseshoes, we found old bottle caps and mattress springs, and it was extremely difficult for us to plant into. But we were fortunate enough because we planted 1 or 2 lamian, and the lamian took over completely. This garden, even though it was one of our first, is actually one of the most successful because it provides year-round and every season interest as well.
I'm not going to say it was haphazard, but we certainly have taken opportunities as they arose. You know, created the opportunities. It's a fun place. It's a big place.
I think if we really knew what we were doing, we probably never would have bought this place. If you think about what makes a garden good, we have very poor soil. There's lots of rocks. We don't actually have a lot of sun because there's a lot of trees, but we make it work.
It's an anti-garden in that sense.
It's caused us to be creative.
Yes. It forces you to think about what you can and can't do.
So this is our Japanese garden. It's one of our newest gardens that we've created. The interesting thing about this garden is that it is a perfect example of how we have used the natural rock as a real statement. This entire space was covered by grass and dirt and weeds, and what we did is we pulled back everything to expose the natural beauty, and then we found planting pockets where we have irises in the spring and grasses, and we've planted conifers. And we've also have been cultivating thyme that self-seeds itself around the different aspects of the garden. The other notable exception, and you'll see that this is a theme, is that we actually have lavender in the corner, and it grows really well here, even though it's not always zone appropriate for southern Vermont, but because it's nestled within the rock, you can actually grow it because it enjoys the warmer temperatures throughout the winter. I mean, our style of garden is really to try to construct containers, either natural containers or containers in the sense of corten steel, so that we can really import our soil and create a better growing environment.
But you can also manage the environment. You can change the soil, so you can add plants that may not fit together necessarily, but you can play with them by changing the soil in the container. And that gives you more opportunity. So you take advantage of the lack of soil by trying to do something like that. Yeah.
We actually have a variety of different garden spaces, and each of them have a bit of a theme. Overall, we like to call our gardening inspired by sort of a Japanese Mediterranean look. Japanese because there's a lot of really large rocks and boulders that we like to sort of emphasize and build around. And Mediterranean because we really have a rocky, dry climate. And so a lot of the plants that would naturally work in the Mediterranean seem to work here, things like lavenders and Russian sages and nepeta. So we really try to kind of emphasize that and blend that as well.
It's an homage to your Greek heritage too.
That is right, yes. And this space is what we call our Mediterranean garden because it's inspired by being in the south of France, overlooking the Mediterranean. It is a very, very dry garden. And what we found, what works most successfully are a bunch of self-seeders like the verbena that we've got here. This whole space never exists. It's another example of us clearing back the rocks, and the soil that we cleared back from the rocks was actually used as the basis from which we built this little patio area. So very often in the summertime, you'll find us in the evening having a glass of wine as we really kind of indulge in the Mediterranean aspect of it. We try to put a lot of plants that are fragrant and are just really just beautiful plants. We have two areas that we call the Chaos Garden, and they're really inspired by the naturalistic planting style of Pete Udolph. And the whole idea there is sort of let plants happily self-seed, and then you pull out what you don't want. I like to call it, my style of garden is gardening by reduction. You sort of let plants inhabit where they need to inhabit, and then every year you pull out what you don't want. So they truly look like chaos in the middle of the summer. It's a riot of color, and we love every minute of it.
Valerie's an engineer. So there was a wonderful plan by meter, and I would be planting plants in there, and she'd say 6 inches, 6 inches. No, that's not exactly right. Now she calls it the Chaos Garden because that plan has been obliterated and everything in there is now something else.
Yeah, so this is what we call the Potager Garden. And we have a variety of different plants here, most notably my dahlias, which I've fallen in love with, and there's several different varieties and shapes and forms. So the dahlias finally are starting to kick in. They had a very slow start to the season, but they're really starting to kick in now as well. In the springtime, we have had a profusion of color from our wisteria. The wisteria is probably about 8 to 10 years now old, and it's really coming into its form. The other thing which I'd love to point out too is I'm a big fan of giant marigolds. I plant them from seed, usually in March, April timeframe, and they literally give you color months and months and months, and probably will continue through the end of October as well. The other thing which you'll notice is that we also have tobacco plant, and we let that self-seed and sprout up in very surprising spaces. Tobacco plant truly is just beautiful and fragrant, particularly in the evenings as well. My number one plant, I think, for southern Vermont is definitely the peony. I think there are parts of this country that are so envious and who can't grow peonies. Peonies love the cold winters.
They do so well here.
They do so well, and they're fussy and they're beautiful. Yeah, I
just planted a new bed of 40 of them, didn't
right.
I? Yeah. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens next spring. let's see if I planted them right.
So this is probably the most special part of our garden. It's a little Japanese walkway that we've created that takes you down to a stream and eventually a waterfall at the edge of our property. So when you come down the stairs, you'll notice that we have tree ferns. These things are definitely not zone appropriate. We bring them in every single wintertime, much to my husband's chagrin. But I love tree ferns, and as you can see, they're doing quite well. They're getting pretty big, but unfortunately, every year that they survive means it's just that much harder to bring them into the house. And the story about the Japanese walkway is that in Japanese folklore, you never want to create a straight path because the evil spirits will follow you. So you actually make a zigzag path so that they get confused and then they go off by themselves and you can survive their chase. So this is our Japanese walkway. This takes you to one of the most beautiful views of our property where two streams meet together. We always laugh because people love our flowers in the garden, but when they get to this part of the garden, they think that this is absolutely the most stunning show that we've got. So again, completely created by nature, but a beautiful, special space for us. Two streams meet together. And in the spring, this is just roaring. And if you make your way down to the bottom of the stream and look up, you'll be treated by a beautiful waterfall. I just love the physicality of it and really kind of getting out and getting your hands dirty in the dirt. But I also love the fact that there's a huge design component to it. And the fact that there's almost a sort of a science around trying to understand, what will grow, won't grow, what are the conditions that you need. So for me, it really combines so much of my personality, and I just love being outside. It's just a wonderful experience.
I think I agree with everything you just said. I mean, it's fun. It's being outside. I like fresh air. This is therapy. It's get outside, get dirty, and enjoy a day in gardening, and then you sit back and say, look at it. This is ours. We made this.
I mean, I cannot enjoy more than spending an afternoon weeding, which most people think is the most arduous, awful task. And I'm sign me up.
She's obsessive weeding.
Oh my
goodness.
Yeah. It is truly relaxing Zen-like experience.
It means I don't have to do it.
Weed. Yes.
That's really good.
But you're the pruner. You're a very
I am, yes. I prune. I prune.
Recommendations and tips for fellow gardeners. I think one is don't take yourself too seriously. Things are going to die and fail, and that's fine. And if you love something enough, keep planting and planting and try to find the right space. So for me, the #1 plant that I really want to have happen is oak leaf hydrangea. And I'm on the 3rd or 4th place in this property, and fingers crossed it'll be a success this year, but we shall see. But my note to other gardeners is just keep persisting and you will make it happen.
Well, I think treat the failure as an opportunity. Don't stop. You know, it's like if something dies, it's simply an opportunity to put something else in, and just keep trying. And I think that's we've done it so many times. If I think of all the plants I've planted here, and how many have gone, I think that if you looked at all that and treated it as a failure, you'd give up. But it's not that at all. You end up with something totally different than you expected to. So I think it's manage that expectation. Just have fun, experiment.
Well, it has been such an incredible time spending with you, spending in the garden. And I think, you know, it's just so important throughout the entire year to just take some time and just be amongst the flowers, be amongst the animals and the wildlife. You know, there are so many bees here right now, and concentrating on things that really thrive this time of year, like this beautiful autumn joy sedum that we have. This is one of the repeat plants that we have throughout our borders. It's just glorious. And the bees just come and land on the beautiful discs of flowers. They're just so, so stunning. But sometimes I just like to get close and personal with the plants. This is just some dying iris foliage, but I just want to come in, do a little bit of weeding, and just kind of sit and be amongst the flowers. Pretty soon they're all going to be going to sleep, so it's nice to really be present with them and be grateful for all of this beautiful color. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I'll see you again very soon on Our Gardens. Bye. Happy gardening.